And I'm here.
There he is.
What is up, people?
How's it going? The highly anticipated arrival.
It's ironic. The person that gives that has the team that tells others how to use the platform can't use it themselves. In my defense, the browser wasn't at the top of the screen, so the buttons weren't to be seen. The irony is not lost on me. Thank you all for coming. How can you have more fun than anything? Put three community leaders in a room. Um, I'm going to introduce these two that's with me, but first, really excited to be putting out the first of many community series with RevGenius. We're traditionally a GTM community, and not that community isn't part of GTM. In fact, it very, very much is. And this is why we're putting it out, because in the sales, marketing, RevOps, customer success world, like, community is part of it, but we dive into everything in detail but this. And it's going to be really interesting learning from you all today and guests every, regular cadence on this about how brands can leverage community. And that's big. So because you all have the raddest intros here, I'm going to read them. So I'm going to start with Rebecca. Rebecca is the head of community at Common Room. We use them. We love them. The intelligent community growth platform that empowers community, DevRel and GTM teams to better engage, grow, and support their members, build their products their users love, and measure the impact their work has on business. So she leads the Uncommon community, which I'm a member of, healthy, fun space, community first builders to share best practices, ask questions. But she's a lover of words and a believer in poetry. So check out her in the Uncommon community Slack or Twitter or LinkedIn or probably RevGenius after this. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here. I have nothing to add. I appreciate that.
It's so comprehensive. And now, Jillian. Jillian is the community lead at Calendly. We love them. We use them. Jillian spent her entire career working in and on communities of all sizes, in all industries, and all types. She has experience with all things community and innovation, including engagement, metrics, strategies, analysis, UX, UI. We'll dive into a little bit of that. This is the one-liner that had Rebecca bowing. She prefers the hardest, ugliest, and most inglorious community challenges. If your resume just said that,
it's so good.
That's real, and that's the person everybody needs on their team, because anyway, I wanted to dive right into it. Like today we're talking about, is your brand ready for community-led growth? Right? Like, we hear so much, I'm starting a brand, I need to start a community, or should I start a community, or should I do a community before all of this? But just diving in, I'm curious for both of you to just debunk a myth about building community from, like, a SaaS company's perspective. Rebecca, do you want to start?
I do have a favorite myth, and maybe I'll reframe it to say I think this is a wish that I always hear from SaaS companies. So it's mythical, but also it's wishical. And it's, once a community is going well, it will run itself. And while I think communities that are really healthy and thriving will indeed, different community members will be responsive to each other and help each other work through problems and challenges, if there is not someone there who is dedicated to making it a space that is continually providing value, continually understanding where members want to go next and what's working for them and what isn't, continually changing different channel types or different content types or different ways that they're reaching out to their members or different ways they're connecting their members or what they're offering to their members, those communities will not continue to survive and thrive if there is no host or moderator or dedicated time and space, whatever you'd like to call that. And I think a lot of SaaS companies, we all want to wish that, right? Like if I can just set it and forget it, and I set the foundation and it's going to be great and it's going to keep driving impact for everyone. And now that I put all the framework in place, it's just going to keep going on its own. It doesn't actually need, dedicated time or attention, because now that the members are there and they know how to interact, it's just going to keep going. And I think that is what should I say? It's an earnest wish, and I can see why people wish for that, but it is not a wish that is going to come true. And so that's where I would say it's like that myth, like it's a mythical, wishical point of view.
Start a social network if you just want to, have the loops and stuff, right?
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. Jillian, what do you want to debunk?
It's kind of similar to that, but it's one that, in the 16 years I've been working in community, the amount of times I have to debunk this in like the first few weeks of working on community is people are inherently good. I completely, I believe that wholeheartedly. However, they don't actually want to help each other without some sort of motivator. This whole concept of that you're going to build a community and people are going to come in and out of the goodness of their own hearts, they're going to spend their free time answering support questions and talking about how wonderful your brand is. It's, again, to use what Rebecca just said, it's wishable. It's not actually reality. And the amount of communities I have seen either start on that premise of, everyone's going to come in and be so helpful and help each other, or better yet, communities that are a few years in and get rid of their entire community team. And then you find out their brand new strategy is the users are going to help each other. I just heard of a fairly large community that just decided to embrace that strategy. And I'm just like, oh no. So that is the myth I'd like to debunk.
I like that one. We were, by the fortunate grace of the universe, able to do that at the beginning. But what you could do at the beginning, to Rebecca's point, doesn't necessarily stay there. So we've had to evolve and stuff. My myth, go on, Rebecca. Keep going.
No, you go.
I'm going to just say something quickly. Like, I have the simplest myth that I would debunk. Listen, we probably have dozens each, but like the simplest, most basic one is, I could do community while I'm doing something else. I always say,
hilarious.
I'm like, you want to hack for community? Everyone asks, right, in the GTM world, because okay, sure, more and more companies are getting their one community manager, but like very, very much don't have that. I said, here's your hack. Do it full time. Like, don't even build the team. You do it full time with the intention to improve. Simple. and then set some metrics that are aligned with your North Star and all of that. And oh my God, that's a hack. But it's a lot of work, as you all know. Rebecca, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think it's, there's this idea of community and practice and community of product. So when I say what I'm about to say, I'm excluding that from that particular conversation. But I think it's one way to look at it, look at community as a community, right, is a product in itself in a way, right? Like people are coming to interact with it. They're looking to derive some value and perhaps give some value back to it. It's like, imagine it's a product. And the same way that value props of products change over time, depending on how users use that product and want to use that product. And there's this way, right, where it's like, now we've added more features. Now that we know what users are trying to do with it. Now that there's other technology in the space that enables them to do X, Y, Z. And so we've also included this part of our product and we've built on this part of our product. Value props change over time based on what users need from a product. And it is just wild to me that we think that the value prop of a community is going to stay static and stagnant forever. And I think that is where like that work comes in, where it's wishful that a community will just run itself, because what people are needing and looking for from that community and in that space, likely our value props for that community need to change over time based on what needs are changing within our members. So if we look at community from a product perspective, that people are coming to this for a reason, then we have to treat it the way that we would treat products, which is like you have to build additional features and functionality, or sunset like different features and functionality, and like re-understand where your users are and what they need from it.
That's a mic drop. And Harshad right there. Yeah, it is a product in and of itself. And with that, I'm curious as to like the North Star metric that you are putting for the community when you have a SaaS product that might have a different North Star, or how do you align that?
It's a good
Jillian,
question. I spent a lot. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in data, and I think the big thing is that kind of going off of almost like that myth I was saying about that, you know, people aren't going to like do magical things. Communities are also not a magical silver bullet that does all the things. I think it's another thing people tend to not understand is that you can build a community, but you actually have to specify what that purpose is. And the reason I say this is because that purpose impacts the North Star metric. So for instance, right now at Calendly, I am building a community from scratch. And this is the conversations I've been in is what is this community here for? What are we doing? What is the purpose that it has for the business? And we've really honed in on this. Like we have a great understanding of it. And so like, for instance, in my situation, it's going to be really around the consumption of information. Like we're looking to make sure that people are finding the most support, the most ideas, the most inspiration, everything like that. And that really, really jives. But what's funny is if you take a look at the metrics of the business, that doesn't exactly align because, you know, the business metrics are things like retention and churn decrease.
More
and
calendar
like
bookings. Sorry, I had to.
That's actually one of them, like the number of meetings.
I had to.
Yeah, and which is great, but that means that the community metrics actually need to be different because mine are around getting ideas out there, getting support out there, whereas the company is doing something different. But on the flip side, if my community was, let's say, an ideation portal, we'd be looking at the number of ideas and how we're impacting the product roadmap. So there is no one North Star metric. It's really, you got to hone in, why are you here and what are you doing? And how does that align with the business?
Now, Jillian, I'm going to use a phrase I hate, double click on this a little bit because you're being so cliche.
You said it well.
It is.
Age. A phrase I hate, but you're a calendar booking tool. Why do you need a community? Why do you and
yeah,
as a follow-up, what problem is a calendar booking tools community solving for its members? And I have some more stuff after that, but we could start with that.
So it's actually funny that you asked that because one of the things that I've been doing, and it's, you know, I know a lot of what this specific, you know, session on is kind of that concept of when is your company ready for a community, right? And that's what I've been doing. And what's interesting is I'm going around right now and doing user research interviews. So I've been talking to just tons and tons of people who use Calendly and even people who don't use Calendly. And the reason I'm doing this is to figure out, what do our members actually want from us? And so there's some super obvious stuff. For instance, when you're setting this up, how do you do it? I mean, you know, great, you have multiple event types, you have all these calendars coming in, there's all sorts of things to figure out. But like, let me tell you a really interesting one that's been coming up is Calendly etiquette. So for instance, is it appropriate if you find someone's Calendly link in a Slack channel, like, you know, a community Slack channel or something like that? Well, can you book it? Should you book it without asking permission? Or like, you know, should you limit what times people can book? Should you have multiple event types? Like, there's all of these little etiquette questions. And so as an example of something that Calendly community is going to be doing specifically is around the setup, the integration, the implementation, but also a huge segment on calendar etiquette, Calendly etiquette, social dilemmas, and everything like that. Which is not normally something you think of, but it's actually a huge conversation that's come up in almost every single interview unprompted. So
how'd you know you were ready to build it? How did Calendly know like now is the time?
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of different business objectives that when they started looking at, they said, how do we maintain the excellence of what we're doing while also growing, while also maintaining, business justification, business costs, and everything like that. And when they really dug into it, they were like, we need one to many. Like one to many is the thing that's really going to do it. The other big indicator is the fact that as the product grows, there are so many little niche things. Like, for instance, I talked to someone earlier who's a solo entrepreneur in a professional service space. And she's like, can you find me other people who are doing exactly what I'm doing? And I want to see how they're using Calendly. And I was like, yeah, because the problem is we're not going to go write that content. I can't write content for how to use Calendly as a dog grooming business, how to use Calendly as a caterer, how to use Calendly when you're using Outlook. Like there's only so many things we can write, but our users can do that. And that's what's so cool is like that was that turning point of, hey, we need to be more agile. We need to get more content out there. So pretty cool stuff.
Cool. And just to break it down a bit more, like this is kind of like a community like Webflow has a community, like to support the product, versus a demand gen type of community, which is different.
Well, it's funny. A lot of people try to separate those out. The reality is that if you build a support community correctly, it actually feeds into that upmarket concept, which is interesting because that's a whole part of GTM. The idea here is that, you have people coming in on the free plan, but they're finding more advanced use cases, which then makes them upgrade what they're doing. And eventually now they're getting the teams and companies and now they're enterprise. And so it actually is a demand gen no matter what you do. It's just not as obvious. It's actually kind of done in a more smooth, sneaky way, I guess is the best way to put it.
And I couldn't agree more. Like I think when you're building a support community for a product, you're going to bring on probably more net new than if you were building up the other way, because the amount of trust, right? Like you're building kind of, I mean, Notion's a more configurable product, so to speak, but like kind of in that world a little bit. Is it influencing your product direction even, like hearing all this?
I definitely think that it will. I mean, like, for instance, so I actually just came from a little over 2 years working at Zapier. So very similar no code automation type of world. Calendly kind of gets to that whole automation world too. And the amount of things where community did impact product. People were in there asking for things. People were in there having ideas, or even people were just kind of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this was possible? And you start seeing this impact the product. You start even seeing it impact how the product or the company talks about product, the level of transparency, the workflows, the feedback cycles, and everything like that. I think the same thing is going to happen at Calendly. I mean, it won't be day one. Communities not only have to earn trust, with customers, but communities also have to earn trust in the organization too.
I love that. Now, Rebecca, you having a product to support communities, I'm curious when you knew it was the right time to build community. Is it a little more obvious day one? Like I'm building a product for communities, I need a community, or are there nuances?
I mean, I'm sure there are nuances and subtleties. Wait, before I answer, I saw that Harshad, if I'm saying your name right, I hope, had a question in the chat, and I don't know if we want to follow up on that first. Okay.
I like this fluid movement. Where's the question? Because I see Harshad wanting to join the Calendly community.
So Harshad said, for Jillian, Harshad had asked, what process did you follow to understand what exact purpose the community should serve? So wondering around that process in terms of like, I think aligning, right? What, not just the outcome of it, but like how you got to that spot and what problem is it going to solve? So I think the question is around the process leading up to what the Calendly community was going to solve.
Thanks for catching that. That's a really good question. And Rebecca, we're going to pose that to you after.
Cool. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I mean, so really what it is around asking questions and open-ended questions, not really closed questions of like, how will you get support from the community? It's like, no, What do you want to see from a community? Sky's the limit. Like, that's literally a question I've asked 5 times today in 5 different interviews. It's and doing the same thing internally. So not only am I talking to users, I'm also going around the organization and I'm asking people of all levels, everywhere from product support specialist one all the way up to the CEO, hey, how, like, one of the questions I think is a huge one is, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to becoming an active user or customer of this company? And people, oh my gosh, people will tell you. People will tell you what you want to hear. Like, they'll just let it go. You'll get so much feedback. But by listening and collecting all that data, that's where you start finding out what's the purpose, what's the problem, what's the opportunity. And if you take all of that and you analyze that, that's how you figure out what the community's for.
That's spectacular. This is so cool having you on, Jillian, because you're like right at the start of building it, and it's so raw and moldable. And
yeah.
Oh man, this is great. Rebecca, now to you.
Okay.
How'd you all figure out the right timing, and then Harshad's question right after?
Yeah, so I think maybe a little background context might help in terms of the CEO of Common Room, where I work at, Linda Leanne. She and I worked together when we were at AWS, and we were working as product marketing managers for serverless computing, which is like a third wave, a new way of doing computing where you pay for only what you use, pay for like value. And so it's just a different way. It's like, the plumbing of tech, AWS, great, has my heart. And so something about that is that when you only pay for value rather than paying for, let's say, EC2 instances, is sales teams were not incentivized to tell customers or get customers on board with serverless. And that makes sense because the incentives didn't make sense for sales teams. Like, they're gold on something different and they're incentivized on something different, and like they should do their roles according to that. And so part of what we saw, Linda and I and other people on the serverless marketing team, we were like, how do we actually help evangelize about serverless when we don't have one of the biggest arms of how you would usually do that with prospective customers talking about serverless? And it is a technology that was nascent at the time. And there were so many people that were excited to use it, excited to build with it, excited to tell others about it, excited to educate about it, excited to be on the cutting edge of what you could do with it and to advance it forward. And so we were like, all right, there's an AWS Heroes group, which is wonderful, was run, or still is, like basically run by Ross Barrich and a bunch of teams. And so we started the AWS Serverless Heroes, like underneath that larger umbrella. And by engaging with those brilliant minds, right, who were also excited about the product, we were able to actually help others on board with serverless, understand what they could do with it, understand why it was useful, as well as like elevating and propping up those people who were excited to be closer to AWS, to be leaders in this space, and then to push it forward and then get them closer to our own internal teams and help them, shape where the product was going to go and the field was going to go in general. And so all that to say that both Linda and I have this very strong opinion that community can and should touch every part of the organization. And we do believe that if you're ready to build a product, you're ready to start thinking about building community. There are other like caveats that go into that, right? Like, do you have a dedicated person you're actually going to spend time in the community? Like, are you ready to actually invest time and like see the community as a product within itself, as a product offering of the product you are offering? But like, our answers to that was yes. So we're like, if you're ready to build a product, like you're ready to start building community, so long as you are like, we believe in dedicating this time and effort and resources to it. And so especially because we're building a community-centric community data, like product data, community data, and CRM data together, like because we're building this platform that can be leveraged so well by community leaders, DevRel leaders, GTM leaders. But we started with that community persona because we knew it, right? We knew what we wished we had when we were building the AWS Serverless Heroes community. what insights we wish we had had, what people were talking about across Reddit and Stack Overflow and GitHub. Like we knew what we wish we could have seen, because that would have like helped us develop what we would have done next for the community. And so when we were starting to build Common Room, it was, for us, luckily, right, it was a no-brainer where we were like, we know the persona, because we've been them, of what would be valuable to community leaders and community managers. And we need to go through this process of going from a 0 to 1 community, just like so many of them either just have or will be, especially in like the SaaS space. And so we were like, okay, like it's going to be, and I mean this in a sweet way, but it's going to be painful at times. Like you're going to invite people to do things and they're not going to be able to, or they're not going to show up. You're going to put a question of the week out there and like one person answers it. And it's like, you know, your dad. And like, there's just like moments.
You could get your dad into Slack. I've tried for the last 3 years to get my dad into Slack. He asked me for so many favors.
Actually,
I could.
It was not my dad. It was actually one of our designers' dads, to be truly frank. But, but so yeah, there was just like, there was definitely this moment of being like, we need to understand all of the pain points from the 0 to 1. So we started out, you know, with a newsletter, just to at least have the ability to wave at someone from their inbox, and then from that newsletter, an invitation to the Slack workspace when we opened it. And then you know, of course, we had like the social channel, so we could start to see what was happening across those channels and see who was like interested in engaging with us. And then through that, like the Uncommon community for Common Room is not yet a mature community. It's not a Figma community. It's not a Notion or Asana community yet. You know, like we don't have brand ambassadors like in different regions around the world. And we do look to those communities and saying that they are really, in a lot of ways, a pinnacle of a community that we would like to be. But we also know that it takes time, and we feel really strongly here that it's okay that we also reflect that building our own community takes time. Like just because we have a strong idea of where we want to go doesn't mean we get to circumvent or shortcut getting there. And then feeling all those growth patterns and ideations and re-ideations and experiments and sunsetting of things and trying to do a new thing and reworking something. Like we have to feel all of that so that we can truly understand and empathize with one of our core groups of users.
That is incredible. I'm thinking like when so many communities out there are for a certain persona, but they lack like a movement behind them, right? Like, hey, I have a community for salespeople. I do too. Mine's for sales leaders. Mine's for this. And like in the community space, there's at least 2 not named Common Room that are like this. And I think
more. Yeah.
At least 2 that I'm in my Slack right now, right? We're for community managers or community leaders. How did you both go about, and like, what have you seen done the best out there of folks shaping that narrative? And like right now we're doing it ourselves. Like we're building a category called collaborative growth. We're saying we need to redefine what community means because it's become so much of a GTM type thing that like we need to go back to like the OG people collaborating with people type stuff. But anyway, I digress. I'm curious as to your thoughts with that, Rebecca, and like building, like how have you built that out and seen others that are best practices?
Maybe like is this maybe like what might differentiate one community from another?
Yeah,
type
like
of things when they
how's the process to like build out that vision and all of that gone out to differentiate?
A lot of us, yeah, I mean, I think what's great is like a lot of it, like we share the same ethos in terms of like it, but how we go about maybe manifesting that ethos is different. But I am proud to share that ethos with, you know, CMX community and guild community and ComStores community or like I am proud that as community first builders, we're like, if we all said that we shared a different ethos and that was our differentiator, I think there would be something fundamentally wrong about what we are saying in terms of the belief of the community industry. I would say something about the uncommon community is like each of those communities is really good at doing certain things. And I think that an issue would be like if we all tried to be like copying each other to all be really good at the exact same things. Because you're like, no, it's okay to be a part. Like, I know that having a lot of Slacks open or Discords can be a lot for someone. So I'm not trying to say like we should overload every member ever and make sure that their whole Slack bar has like 30 Slacks on it. But I think as long as you're listening to your members about what they like about the community and what they're finding value from, like keep driving in that direction. And you can ask and send surveys, like through Common Room, we let you have automated surveys to cohorts of members to be like, hey, do you wish you had X, Y, or Z? And you could actually understand if people in your community also wanted you to be offering something that they were finding in another community. And you can ask them about like, are they finding value in their community, in your community? Are you getting what you expect out of this community? For us, I think one of our biggest differentiators is, at least as a team, as an internal team, we're like very opinionated. And we also really, really welcome people having very different opinions from us. And so I think one way that this is perhaps manifested most recently in something that you just touched on is that I like adamantly believe, as well as I'm going to speak for the rest of my team, that the closer community can be to GTM goals, and like the closer that like marketing, sure, but like also sales, as long as it's done in a thoughtful way, the more impactful and like respect and like longevity community teams have in an organization. And so I think there are really thoughtful ways to do this. I think there are ways to do missteps. I think we're wading into a territory that's going to be hard to navigate, and that like we're going to have to keep like, reworking to make sure, like refining to make sure it's going well. But we are strongly opinionated that if done in a thoughtful way with the right timing, to the right cohorts of members, to the right people who have given consent, if you will, in that community space, that like I truly believe to elevate the community function overall also means then community leaders have to know how to like show their impact on either leads, marketing qualified leads, or what I would like to call community qualified leads first. So basically pipeline, and then either time to close or opportunity for upsells or reduced churn, like those business bottom lines, because of whatever members are finding in terms of being in that community space. And so for us as a differentiator, I think at Uncommon, we try really hard to like have an opinion and then invite alternative viewpoints. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's
I love
maybe
that
too
about
much.
you all, and thank you for building a product without plugging too hard. That allows community managers to be more to more.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Open
Be
to
more
feedback.
more. Be more to more. Jillian, what about you? You have a calendar tool that's phenomenal. That does a bunch of things. Like, how have you built like a movement from that, or how are you leveraging community to do that?
I mean, obviously, we're still getting going. Like, I mean, the platform's not even open to the public yet. But what's kind of in my brain and like where I'm going is it is kind of that idea of that, yeah, there's other communities out there, there's other products out there that do things very similar to us. I don't intend to replicate any of those. I have to find a way to make us stand out. It's not that I want to overshadow anyone, though. It's that it's okay for people to find their homes in different places and to get the information that they need in different places. And yeah, maybe some people are going to hit Calendly community in the future and be like, this is okay. There's something else I like better. And that's okay. I think kind of example I want to give is, so like at Zapier, for instance, here it is. There are all of these automation tools out there. There are so many. And if you dig into Reddit and Stack Overflow and things like that, I mean, you just go down the rabbit hole. Like it's incredible. And what I always strive to do on that community was to be the company that kind of had that automation for everyone type of mentality. So we weren't going to be a bunch of people talking about deep code and all this other stuff. The idea was to keep it super, super accessible. And it was really cool. One example I always love to give was we had one day a teacher come in. I think she said she taught like 5th or 6th grade. And basically she had like paraprofessionals that helped out with stuff. And she was trying to figure out how to basically disperse the work better. And she wanted to use Zapier to do that. So here it is, this 5th grade teacher is using Zapier, and she came to our community to get that help that she needed. And I actually talked to her, and she was kind of like, yeah, I tried some of the other communities first, but like when I said I didn't know what I was doing, they didn't feel very welcoming, or it felt like I had to like get to a certain level of, sufferfest before I was allowed to like get the help that I needed. And it was like, okay. And so I think that's the thing about each one of these communities is that's the space that you can fill. It's not so much that your brand has to be all encompassing and be the best of everything. It's you can have a specific persona and voice and tone and culture in that community. And it's funny, as we've talked about kind of like all the Slack channels we're in, I'm in 4, including the Calendly Slack. The other 3 are community professional Slacks, and I'm not going to name names, but like one of those 3 is my favorite. Like I love that group. Like they're so good. The people that are in that group probably know this. The other 2 are great, but like I don't love them as much. And because of that, there's a need for that one that I love so much, which doesn't discount the other 2. And so it's okay to have that. You know what I mean?
What makes you love the one? I think this is big, and anyone who's listening, take this and run with it.
It's actually the level of it's so informal. It's such an informal group. You don't have to have a fully baked thought. It's one of those groups that I can go in and just be like, hello, everyone. I don't feel like adulting today. Why am I here? Community management is hard. This sucks. And I can leave it, come back 20 minutes later, and there are like several dozen emojis and people posting GIFs and just like all sorts of chaos. And it's what I need. Whereas if I went into some of the other groups and said that, people would be posting help articles and meditation links and all sorts of things. And I'm like, yo, I don't need that. I just needed someone to tell me that today sucks, like to just validate my feelings that this is hard. And you can do that in your brand community too. Like you actually can do that. Someone comes in and says, I'm so frustrated, I'm angry, your product isn't working right. You can be like, yo, dude, I get it. I've been there. Like it does suck sometimes. Let's figure out how to make it less sucky. Like you actually can do that, which I think that's the magic of community that no other part of the organization can do. Like we can act like that.
It's funny that you mentioned the informal stuff. We have like a senior leader community, and every Thursday we have coffee talks, not recorded, on Zoom. And once I asked if people wanted it to be recorded, they said we'll stop showing up.
Yep.
like this is going to the garbage if you stop recording it. And even at at all levels, I'm trying to say, like people love being able to be their true selves and bring their authentic selves.
Yeah, very much.
What about you, Rebecca? Like what differentiates the not uncommon Slack versus outside of uncommon, because we know that's your favorite. Like what are the key differentiators for the ones that you like versus or just okay?
No, I think this is a great question. I mean, maybe I already gave it away, and maybe that's why Uncommon is shaped as it is a bit. One, we want to shape it with our members, but 2,
Right.
a lot of it is probably like I like communities that are opinionated, or like as opinionated while also like open to discourse, right? And so I think I gravitate toward those, and as much as I want the Uncommon community to like not have any of me in it at all, I think that's impossible in a way as a community host to not in some ways have your fingerprints across it. And I think the goal there, right, is to like understand that at some point, like none of us are likely going to be our community host forever. It's like, how do you make sure that you transfer your fingerprints to someone else's fingerprints as you handshake and like it transitions to like different leadership? And a lot of that has to do with how you support and listen to your community members like throughout that process of transition. But I think there's probably there's a tell that it's like, oh, what I like about the Uncommon community is also what I'm attracted to in other communities, which are people that are like, hey, here's my strong opinion, loosely held, or, the memes that are like, change my mind. Like pizza's better when it's only has olive oil instead of like red sauce or whatever. And I'm like, oh, let's talk about this. Okay, so I've been scrolling around because I saw that we also had another question from Casey.
Oh,
Galligan.
yeah, sorry. I'm mediocre as the host.
No, you're doing great. You are
I'm trying to
hosting. So I was
engage.
like, oh. Yeah, you're busy, which is why
All
you
right,
have at least.
So Harshad, first off, you're earning all the community stars for the like really great questions. You'll be rewarded accordingly. Rebecca, do you want to read it or should I? I'm on there right now.
So Harshad for sure, but also in the regular chat, Casey asked one a little bit ago, which is why I think we scrolled by it.
Please.
Do you want me to ask one first? Okay.
Rebecca, do it.
So Casey said, I think community ends up influencing a company's brand as time goes on. But if you're a new company, what do you need to have established with your brand before you can try to grow a community around it? Just to make sure that the community that starts to grow is full of or attracts the right type of people who would benefit from your product or service. Is there a checklist for what you need to have out there on your brand first? Which I think is a great question, a great starter question.
It's an unbelievable question. So who wants to take it first, ladies?
I'll take a step. I'll say, oh, sorry. Did you want to go?
No, I was going to say, this might surprise you, but I have strong opinions and Jillian should go. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, what's funny is I've seen a lot of times companies try to start a community too soon. And what happens is you don't have any super users. And super users are kind of how you get your community off the ground. So I'd say that's actually your checklist. If you don't have some passionate, prolific, strongly opinionated like Rebecca's, that you can pull into your community, you're going to have a hard time getting that thing off the ground. It's not so much that your brand's got to be off the ground. It's that you've got to have a little bit of a user base, because it's, the one thing I keep hearing people say in community, and we touched on this at the very beginning, you can't just build it and they're going to show up. In fact, one of my former bosses, he always loved to show this stupid video. If he's listening, he's going to be like, it's not stupid, but it's this party, like this big thing outside, and there's this music pumping, and this guy, just ridiculous guy, is out there like just swinging around and dancing and acting completely just unhinged, and then more people start joining the totally unhinged dance party, and that's the thing. You need that guy. Like, that's how you start a community. You need that unhinged person who's in the middle of the dance floor just raving by themselves to get the community going. And I think that's what a lot of brands miss. You need your unhinged promoter to get that going. And that's usually not on anyone's checklists. I mean, that's kind of a hard one to communicate to like an executive. Be like, do you have an unhinged super user I can lean on?
Yeah, you're basically like, who's that person that's constantly writing on, forums or to your support channel, asking for feature requests and like mentioning you on their like LinkedIn posts about how they did something with you. You're like, we can build a relationship with that person and like turn that energy into something that's useful for both of us, right? Rather than just being like this person again with their 100th and 50th feature request, and you're like, no, that's great. They're interested. They're involved. They want to participate.
Yep.
Totally.
It's funny because there's two ways to look at that person. That person is under your skin sometimes. That's one way. And the other way is, oh my gosh, this person is everything. And that's a more productive way. But Yeah, I'm curious as to some communities out there that you've seen, um, that like are your like North Star from like a case study standpoint, that didn't have a community first, and then built it well, and why is that? Like, what did they do well that you really like, Rebecca? Or making this one started with you.
Thank you. So I think there are a lot of amazing communities out there, and like we are lucky enough to work with customers that are
Yeah.
like, wow, they like blow me away. Like we would like the Uncommon community to be that at some point. Um, so I'll like we have done like business impact reports and like with a few different customers, but I can't like disclose exactly which
Mm,
data points go to which. But so like with Figma and Asana, we've seen both from that like GTM business bottom line angle, right? Where we're able, and like DBT Labs, we're able to show people who showed up in the community first versus who showed up, let's say, in the CRM later. So the pipeline came first because they joined a community. And then those people ended up either the deals closed faster, and the deal sizes were larger, as well as the like upsell and retention was higher. And so from that business GTM point of view, it's amazing to see that people who are running and hosting and actively managing and participating with and building with their community members, that is like one thing that I think is great. That those I think are outcomes or byproducts almost of the way that they run their communities, like of the way that they have various user programs for people who learn in different styles, whether or not they're like community blog posts or they have live sessions on Twitch or they have user group meetups like in person. And so the pillars that they go by, right, which is like we host hackathons and we host lightning talks and we host in-person events and we support like daily Slack channels. And if you don't like a app-based Slack chat, then we have discourse forums, right? And so they just like provide so many ways for people who want to interact in the ways that they want to interact. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. But I think that the one of the North Stars that I want to highlight most in this moment is the way that Notion has built their community, and the fact that like Notion, for example, they're North America based, but originally where their like community members where their users were like most active and like most jazzed about the Notion product was in Japan. And they were like, wait, should we like go to Japan? I mean, that's not like our home HQ, but like how might we support this like this emerging groundswell of just people who are naturally the unhingedly dancing at our Notion party, like they're on our front lawn. Like, what would happen if we spent time with them and asked what they needed and were able to help them double down on what they're doing in that region? And so Notion, in a way, I don't want to say that they changed their trajectory, but they were like, we know that we want to serve community members. We thought that it would probably be around, maybe the North Americas type of space. And it wasn't, in terms of a like community, like hunger for like talking about and building on and learning about how to use Notion better. And so it's really cool that Notion was like, okay, how do we serve these user groups based out of Japan, and then learn from what worked well with them, and then begin to apply that as we start to build out other regional user groups and other places. And so I love that Notion went to where their biggest fans and champions and unhinged dancers were, rather than saying, no, we're going to build it in North America first because that's where we're most comfortable. And so I think that's a North Star example to me of like what it means to like serve your members and to like really harness those 5, 10, 15, that like small group of champions that you have.
One other thing Notion did that I think Notion's every community manager's like one of their North Stars. One of the cool things I saw that they did as well is they encouraged users to make money off Notion, right? Like with all the templates and stuff. And they really facilitated that. And they created like, and this is kind of, it's interesting, and we could dive in another call on this more, but I always find that intriguing. Jillian, what about yourself?
As far as communities that have like
Yeah,
done it really well.
especially ones that make like that are joined with SaaS products that you know, maybe like Calendly didn't have a community at Go, that built it a little later, that have done it well, to help folks see some examples.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I will say, having worked in community this long, this is where, like, I said earlier about being like, people being inherently good. I'm also kind of like inherently a critic. So I look at a lot of communities and I'm like, you could have done it better. And I actually think in the SaaS space specifically, there's a lot of companies that I actually don't think are doing community well, and I'm not going to name them. But like the ones that like I constantly look to, and I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. Like I love Asana. Like I think Asana is amazing. I love their community. I love what Figma's done. You know, I really admire those ones. But I see a lot of companies that I feel like really have that momentum to get community stood up somewhere in the process, and then they forget about it. And I actually see that a lot more often than ones that I can actually say I admire, which I hate to be a critic, but that's kind of my perspective.
What?
I'll also say I'm in a different situation than Rebecca, because Rebecca gets to see all of these communities, whereas I get to see them usually as either inspiration or as competitors. So it's a little different.
What are some of the top things that brands are doing wrong when they go in?
Ooh, great question.
I mean, I know that's a good question. I think one of the big things they see is, so you have companies that stand up a community and they're like, this is what we're going to do with the community. And even if you did your research, you did everything you possibly could, and you're like, this is what we're going to do. But then they get way too stuck in that original strategy and they continue to try to force, just something that's not working. And I think, if there's any piece of advice I can leave all of you with, is be agile, be adaptable, and be approachable. Like for instance, with Calendly community, there's stuff that I'm setting up that I am 99% sure customers are going to come to me and be like, Jillian, that's not really what we meant. Like that doesn't work. And I can either take that personally and be like, oh, my strategy, or I can roll with the punches and change things up and continue to try to serve my customers. That's what I see people tend to do incorrectly the most, is like just be so enamored with what they originally create and not willing to adapt and overcome.
Oh my gosh, I feel like 100% agree with Jillian there. And also I think the exact flip side of that, when communities are like, we actually don't know why we want to be here. We don't know who might actually like this. We just know that other people have had communities, and like, community is inherently a good thing, and we'll figure it out along the way. And I do think, yes, you will figure things out along the way. But if you do not know your why or your goal or what your members would want from it or get value from, or what you would offer them or what their goals are, it's either like you're either super stuck and rigid, being like, this is what we're going to do, and there's like no changing it, and people are either with us or they're not. And then when people aren't with you, you're like, oh man, no. Or you're a totally unmoored and you're just like, it'll be easy. And you're like, oh no, that is also a really bad idea. If you have no reason for your why or what your prospective members' whys would be.
Yeah, totally agree. So here's just we got a bunch of questions. We
have a couple.
Speed round.
Speed round. Could you share tips on how to motivate users to participate, or what was your process to create initiatives based on your core goals? From Bianca.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm sorry. Motivating users to participate. So luckily through Common Room, we do have like surveys that we can send out. And one of the things that I do on the second day that someone joins the Uncommon community is I say like, hey, what are you most interested in? And then based on their survey responses, right, I can put them in like segments and understand who's interested in what. So that just kind of helps me understand different users and what their motivations might be. But I think like, outside of using a tool that allows you to do something like that, I think polls can be super useful. They're very lightweight. They give you like some version of understanding of kind of just the I'm at a loss for words, like where the person's at, where the community's at, the sentiment of like what people are like, looking for. But also I think, if people are looking for connections, depending on what your why is of your community and what you think that value prop would be, then let's say it's like, I'm here to network with other professionals, and then understand what industry that person is in or what level they're at. Are they a beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert? And then say like, hey, would it be interesting to you if I connected you with someone who's really excellent, who's also in this community, who's in your space, right? In your industry space or at your like a similar level or one right above you. So like, I think being able to make those connections between what that person has come for and then what you might be able to offer them, just beginning to build those bridges helps people understand that like, I want to come back to this community. I do want to participate. I've been interacted with and I've gotten something in return, and I'd also like to give something back. So I think it is a lot of hard work, which is why we keep talking about needing to have someone who can dedicate time to it, because it doesn't just happen like accidentally.
Yeah, and my quick answer to that is put community at key friction points. Your community should be so easy to use. And so, I mean, especially in SaaS, especially in support and inspiration, if someone is at the point where they're going, gosh, what are other things I can do with this? That's a friction point. Make sure your community is at that friction point. This means in product messaging. It could be part of the chat bot. It could be part of the support workflow, the contact form, the mega nav. Put community at key friction points. That's like one of the biggest ways. And then everything Rebecca said, once they're in there, that's how you keep them there. Let's go to the question down here. Do you feel, oops, sorry.
Thank you, Jillian. No, it's not. Do you feel, Jillian will take this one first. Do you feel naming the community is a good move or needs to be done by the people themselves? Would we allow the people to name our company in general? It's hard to force that upon the people. What do you think, Jillian? Is the Calendly community going to be called something else?
It's going to be called Calendly community.
It's going to be called
and the reason,
yeah.
Yeah, no, and the really, really quick and simple reason here is, okay, so let's think about this. Let's say, for instance, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's just say we're talking about this product we're using right now, AirMeet, okay? And you have a question about their product and you want to find their community. What are you going to search? You're probably going to search AirMeet community. Now, if their community is called Airheads Collaborate, or I don't know, something like that, you're probably not going to search. I mean, it could be. You're not going to search that term. And so I am a big proponent of using SEO in your favor, because that's also a key friction point. Make it easy to find your community. You can get creative after that, though. If you want to call the people in your community something, you can do that. You can be creative, but I tend to prefer to let the company name it and leverage SEO wherever I can.
Okay. Uncommon?
I was going to say, I actually love that answer, because I was thinking about, we started the community when we came out of stealth. It was something that we told people on that original landing page, sign up for our newsletter. We're uncommon community leaders. And so I think Jillian is correct. Like, I'm like, would we name it the same thing again if we were to think about it in terms of, if we were to think about it multidimensionally, as she just elaborated upon. And I think there's something special about the name Uncommon, and it's like, uncommon, common room. But we do end up having to say common rooms, uncommon community, or uncommon community for common room, so that we can get that SEO as well. And so I think that from a tactical perspective, Jillian is totally correct. From like a nostalgia perspective, I have this other feeling where I'm like, but I love uncommon. But I don't necessarily think that operating off nostalgia all the time, when someone's just trying to find your community, is the best way to operate.
I spoke to on this. Starting with community first, would I name my product RevGenius? I don't know what product I could make that seems like a good name for. And I spoke to somebody whose product was Boast.ai. They had hundreds of thousands of people. They had the traction community because they created it for early stage founders, and they felt that better represented them.
Yeah.
But they had a big community as like a separate business. Then you see it with CMX, which was acquired, Sales Hacker, which was acquired. So there's uniqueness all around. But yeah, I love all of your answers. We are at 3 p.m. How could people get in touch with you all? And
Jillian,
thank you
you
for
go.
being here.
Yeah, sure. Super easy to find on LinkedIn. Just hit me up. I love talking to people, love answering questions. So yeah, just send me a message or whatever. That's pretty much it.
Rebecca?
Jillian, I'm so glad I got to be on this panel with you. I just want to say that I've admired your work for so long. You can find me at Rebecca Marstern on LinkedIn, at Becca Odele is my handle on Twitter. And most of all, if you'd like to join a community of thousands of community leaders, and one day we might be beloved by Jillian, you can join the Uncommon Community Slack at www.commonroom.io/uncommon, and you'll find all sorts of community resources there, blog posts, videos, that sort of thing, as well as the link to invite to join our Slack.
I will be opening up a no filter channel so that I could help bring in Jillian there as well. Thank you both for joining me. You both are exceptional leaders. I've learned a ton from you. I look forward to continuing to learn. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. And thank you all for coming and watching. We're going to be doing this regularly. You all mean the world.